Good morning. Today we're going to work with some more of the trig functions. So let's do this review from yesterday. Go ahead and take a few minutes and do it. All right. So now let's talk about where it is. Sine is negative. Sine is negative in the third and the fourth quadrant. Cosine is negative. Cosine is negative in the second and the third quadrant. Where are they both negative? So it has to be a third quadrant angle. So let's draw what that looks like. It says we have the square root of, the negative square root of 15, which is going to be almost 4, and negative 1. So x is negative square root of 15, y is negative 1, and r is 4. So we're going to go out to the negative square root of 15 and down negative 1. So here's our triangle. Negative square root of 15, negative 1, and there's our 4. So what are the other 6 trig functions? Well, we've got sine and cosine. Tangent of theta, remember, is y over x, so it's negative 1 over the square root of 15. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so it's simply what did I forget here? It should be negative 1 over the negative square root of 15, which will make that a positive. Should tangent be positive in the third quadrant? Yes. So we have 1 over the square root of 15. If we rationalize that, we end up with the square root of 15 over 15. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. It's easiest if we go back here to this one, because then we don't have to re-rationalize. This is x, so negative square root of 15, over y, which is negative 1. Again, our negatives cancel, and so we're left with the square root of 15. Remember that cosecant is a reciprocal of sine. So cosecant is 4 over negative 1, which is negative 4. Secant is a reciprocal of cosine, so it's 4 over the square root of negative 15, the negative square root of 15. If we rationalize that, we multiply top and bottom by the square root of 15. 4 times the square root of 15 over negative 15. Are cosecant and secant, cosine and sine, all negative in this quadrant? Yes, they are. So today we're going to look at what happens if we're only given one of the trig functions instead of both of the trig functions. So let's take a look at this. Sine is 1/3 and the cosine of theta is less than 0. Find the other trig functions and in what quadrant does this angle terminate. This is key. If we don't figure out which quadrant we're in, we're going to get the wrong positive and negative signs here. So again, let's think about sine is positive. Sine is positive in the first and the second quadrants. Cosine is negative in the second and the third quadrants, so it has to be a second quadrant angle. That is key because that will tell us what our x value is going to be, that our x value will be positive or negative. So we're going to come down here and we're going to draw our picture again. But the problem is, I know that this is my y, and this is my r, but how do I find my x? Talk to your side partner just a minute about how you find your x. Okay, so who's going to give me the answer? Right, Pythagorean theorem. X squared plus y squared equals r squared. Well, x we don't know. Y is 1, r is 3. So we get x squared plus 1 equals 9. Solving for x squared, we get x squared equals 8. Taking the square root of both sides, we get x equals the square root of 8, which is 2 square roots of 2. But now we need to go back because remember, square roots can either be positive or negative. And which value do we need? Well, if we're in the second quadrant, our x has to be negative. So now we're going to plot our points. We're going to go to the left, negative 2 square roots of 2, or the square root of 8. And we're going to go up 1. We'll draw our triangle here. And we'll label our sides. That right there is where our theta is. This is negative 2 square roots of 2. This is a positive 1. Now we can find the other 6 trig functions just like we've been doing. Sine of theta we know is 1/3. Cosine of theta, remember, is x over r, and our radius here, I forgot to put that in, is 3. So negative 2 square roots of 2 over 3. Tangent is either y over x or sine over cosine. So tangent is 1/3, or excuse me, our y value over our x value, negative 2 square roots of 2. Now, we really shouldn't leave it like that, so we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. And we get the square root of 2 over negative 4. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room so we can do the cosine, excuse me, the cotangent. Cotangent is 1 over the tangent, or x over y. Sometimes it's easier to go back and do the x over y than it is to take the reciprocal of that, because then that would put our radical in the denominator. We'd have to rationalize. So we have negative 2 square roots of 2. Cosecant of theta is the reciprocal of sine. So it's 3 over 1, which is 3. And secant of theta is the reciprocal of cosine. So it's 3 over negative 2 square roots of 2. Again, we have to rationalize. So we multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. And we get 3 square roots of 2 over negative 4, which is negative 3 square roots of 2 over 4. That's the reciprocal of that one. Looking back, let's check. We said this angle was in the second quadrant. Second quadrant, sine is positive, cosecant is positive. The rest are all negative. Make sure that your positive and negative signs match your quadrants. That will be the biggest mistake that people make with this problems. All right, now you try this one. Remember to draw your angle. Remember to find the 6 trig functions. Remember to figure out which quadrant we're in. So pause this just a minute and do this problem, please. All right, tangent is positive, but sine is negative. Well, where is tangent positive? Tangent is positive here and here. Where is sine negative? Sine is negative here and here. What's the only quadrant? It's the third quadrant. So let's draw our angle. Okay, so for this to be positive, but to be in the the third quadrant, that means our x has to be a negative value and our y has to be a negative value, because negative divided by a negative is a positive. So our x is a negative 2, our y is a negative 1. All right, so we need to plot this. It says go to the right, or excuse me, to the left 2 and down 1. So this is our triangle. We're going to draw our triangle. We're going to put our theta in. Right there's where our theta goes. And what we need to remember is that this is our reference angle. So it's got the same trig value as whatever would be this direction. What you have to think about is the positive and negative signs. Now, how do we find this radius? Talk to your side partner about this. This is a -2 here for my x, a -1 here for my y. How do you find radius? Talk to your side partner, please. Right. In order to find your radius, you have to use the Pythagorean theorem. Now, the other thing you have to be careful of is you have to be smarter than your calculator. You should know what -2 squared is. It's -2 times -2, which is a +4. -1 times -1 is a +1. If you put this on your calculator and you forget to put the parentheses in, your calculator will read it as the opposite of 2 squared. What it does is it thinks you're talking about that. So it takes 2 and squares it and then makes the opposite of it. That is not what you want. If you put it into your calculator, make sure you put parentheses around it. And then square it, because it's the -2 that is being squared there. Please, please, please realize that anytime you do these, if you have a negative value when you square it, it's going to be a positive. So 5 equals r squared. So then r equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Now, which value do we want? Would you talk to your side partner, please, for a minute about which value of those you want? Right. We want the positive value because our radius is always positive. So our radius is going to be the square root of 5. That is what we want. So now we know x, y, and r. Can we figure out what the other trig functions are? We should be able to, based on the fact that we know that sine of theta is y over r, but y was -1, and r was the square root of 5. If we rationalize that, we get the negative square root of 5 over 5. Cosine of theta is x over r, which was -2 over the square root of 5. If we rationalize that, we get -2 square roots of 5 over 5. Tangent of theta we were given. That was 1/2. Oops, forgot my theta in here. Cosecant of theta, remember, is the reciprocal, 1 over this. Again, it's always easier to do it before we rationalize to take the reciprocal. So that's the square root of 5 over -1, which is the negative square root of 5. Secant of theta is the reciprocal of cosine. So we're going to take the square root of 5 over -2, which is negative square roots of 5 over 2. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, 2 over 1, which is 2. Remember, our angle is in the third quadrant. So sine, cosine, cosecant, and secant, these 4 values right here, are negative. But tangent and cotangent are positive, which is what we got. Please be careful. Watch your positive and negative signs when you're doing today's work. Also, please make sure that you're drawing your illustrations. So for tomorrow, I'd like you to do on page 134, 43 to 57 the odds. Make sure that you do the illustrations.